Hi everyone, Nikki here. Tonight we're going to be painting this beach-themed wine bottle. I have our sample. I worked with a 1.5 liter bottle of wine, so I was able to paint two beach scenes, one with some birds and a sailboat, and the other one with some volcanoes in the distance and a little beach umbrella and chair. If you're working with a smaller bottle, that's totally fine. You might just have to put your two scenes closer together, or maybe you just focus on one. I had a nice dark tinted blue wine bottle, but if you don't have that, that's no problem at all. You could use a clear bottle or one of those olive green tinted ones. We can always make it work with the paint. All right, so let me go over what paints and materials we need and then we'll get started. Okay, so I have my bottle here. I soaked in hot water and I scraped off all of the labels. Like I said, you could use any color. We can totally make it work with our paint. I worked with enamel paints because I do have them, but acrylic would be fine too. Enamel is just recommended for glass because it sets after a certain number of days and it won't scrape off or wash off. But that's fine if you don't necessarily have that. So I'm working with some blacks and browns and white as our basics. I also have a nice dark blue here. Okay. And then I have a couple different shades of green for our palm trees. If you don't have a light green on hand, that's fine. You could always add in some yellow or white to lighten your regular green. And then I have a couple shades of teal for my water. So if you don't have turquoise or teal, that's fine too, because we could just add a little green and yellow to our blue when we get there, and we'll get the color right. And then I have a couple brighter colors for my umbrella. I chose yellow and red, but if you have anything else like orange or whatever color you prefer is totally fine. All right, so let's go over, we have some paint brushes. I always like to work with some nice small detailed brushes. I have a wider flat brush to make our sand. That's what we're gonna be starting with, is the sand. And then I also have a round brush that was great for the foam of the waves as well as the fluffy clouds. So if you do have a round brush on hand, that's good for the dry brush technique we're gonna be going over. And then I have my handy cup of water, some paper towel, and my makeshift palette, which is just some recycled cardboard. So we're going to be starting with brown, yellow, and white, and we're going to be doing the base of our bottle and starting with the sand, okay? Okay, so we're going to be starting with the sand dunes. Depending on the size of your bottle, you'll have space for about 3 to 4 dunes. So the first 3 colors we need are yellow, brown, and white. So I have my flat brush here. It's dry right now. I'm going to take some brown and white and start mixing. Get that color. It's going to be a good amount of white that we need, and then just a teeny bit of yellow. And feel free to make a generous amount because we're going to be painting quite a bit of sand. Okay. All right, so we'll start at the base of the bottle. And you can kind of make them in varying sizes. Depending on you know, what kind of paint you're using, we might have to do 2 layers here. But if it's acrylic, it'll dry fast enough that that won't be a problem. Alright. So if it gets a little streaky, I can add a teeny bit of water just to get that going. Okay. So I'll continually be mixing my sand. If I get some different shades here and there, that's fine because we all know sand is tons of different colors. Okay, so I have 1 dune there. Next one I'm going to do, maybe I'll have it go up a little bit higher. This will maybe be one that I put you know, my umbrella and chair on. Okay. So we're just working on the base of the bottle now. So you might be at the point, if you've done your 2 dunes here, that you're taking a look and you're like, oh, I might only have space for, you know, 3 of them. That's fine. So I'm just still mixing my browns, white, and yellow for that sand color. I'll do one. This one I'll do a little bit maybe flatter. So we will want space for our, you know, our ocean and our boat. Okay. So be generous with the paint. You know, it's a lighter color, so you have to go a little thick. And then I have space for 1 more. So I'm just continually kind of mixing, and it's nice to get the different variation of color, a little streak. Okay, and we'll add a little bit of a highlight later for the sand. Alright. Okay, so see a couple spots, mine's a little streaky. I might go back in once it's a little more dry. Okay. So we have our first layer of sand on here. Like I said, if yours is a little streaky, we're gonna let it dry and we can add in another layer after we're done with the water. Okay. Okay, so I have my flat brush again. I just cleaned it and dried it off. I do have my turquoise colors, but I wanted to show you, just in case you don't have that, how to mix your own. So you're gonna just slowly add a little bit of green and blue to white to get the desired shade you like. So I might need a little more blue there. And then you'll kind of get a similar, you know, it's gonna be a little muddier than true turquoise, but it'll still be, you know, a similar color. All right? You can always just kind of keep going and adding a little bit of green and blue to get your desired shade. You might want your water a little greener. And you're just gonna add that slowly to white to get your desired ocean color, okay? So we'll go ahead and use our flat brush. I basically just mixed my 2 shades of teal as I went. Generous again with the brush strokes, straight across. And we're going about halfway up the bottle. So. And don't worry if it's a little streaky, we can always add in some detail and color later. So here I am, I'm just grabbing my 2 turquoise colors, or if you made your own, totally fine. As we know, just like sand, water has tons of different colors as well. Okay, so I'm just kind of going all the way across for my horizon line here. Continually mixing in. And as you know, if you've attended my classes, sometimes the, you know, enamel and acrylic, if you keep going over it on glass, it can get streaky. So your best bet is to just let it basically dry. And if you're getting a little sloppy here, we're actually gonna go over that and add a little highlight to the sand, so don't even worry about it if you get a little overlappy. So just go straight across here. Doesn't have to be perfect. Long brush strokes. Continually grabbing our turquoise there. Now if you're working with a clear bottle, you might want it to be a little darker blue for your water. So that's totally up to you. I was speaking with a patron and she was mentioning possibly painting her whole bottle blue. The only thing with that is if you are gonna put lights in it, it can make the bottle really, really dark and the lights won't show through as much. So you're better off just kind of adding in clouds and sky and ocean colors as we go if you're working with like an olive green or a clear bottle. So here I am, just making my way across. Okay. And as you can see, I'm not being perfect with the colors. I've got a couple different shades going on here. And I'm gonna edge as close as I can. But if it gets a little overlapped, no problem. So, and you can see it's about halfway up the bottom. Okay. So get nice and close to the side. And after we let this dry a few seconds, I will edge the sand and get that a little bit solid, and then that'll be the time that we can add in a little bit extra layer of color. Okay. So here we are on our ocean. This is basically what yours should look like by now. Okay. And next we're gonna be just finishing up our sand, and then we'll start on our palm trees. Okay, so here we are. We're just gonna go over our sand and water one more time before we start the rest of our painting. So I'm just gonna get mixing again on my browns and whites. You probably have a little streakiness going on. If you don't, you can just follow along and skip this. But I just had a couple spots that I thought needed to kind of be spruced up. So it's a little light there. Let me add in a little more brown. So I'm more loosey-goosey with my paint mixing, but I kind of like that because it gives a variety of color. So we're just gonna kind of, and you can keep a little texture if you want to do some dabs or anything like that. See, mine got a little streaky there too. Okay. So just polish that up, just a teeny bit of yellow too. And see, this one was streaky. And I'll kind of go back over that. Okay. And then while it's still wet, what we'll do is we'll add a little highlight to the top so it blends nicely. Okay. All right. So I've touched up all my sand now so it's not as streaky looking. So I'm going to grab a smaller detail brush, a little pointier, and I'm going to take plain white, and I'm just going to run it along the top of my dunes. It's kind of like a little highlight, and it separates the dunes as well as the water line. You can add in a teeny bit of brown if you don't want true white, if it's looking a little too. So, and then what you can do, because the paint's wet, you can kind of blend it down. Okay. So we got like a nice little highlight there. So again, I'm just using my detail brush, and see how I can get a nice separation with the water. Okay. And because our paint's still wet, we can kind of blend down like this. Okay. All right. And depends on, you know, how dark or light you want your sand. You might want yours a little browner. You might want yours a little bit more pinkish. If you did want it a little more peachy, you could even add in a tinge of red. So I'm just kind of highlighting my little dunes here. Okay, got one more. And then after this, what we'll do is we'll just add in maybe a couple more streaks to our water to darken it. All right. Okay, that's a little harsh there. Kind of blend it down. So acrylic dries pretty fast, so if you are looking to do any blending like this, you have to do it pretty quickly with paint application. All right, so I'm pretty happy with how my dunes came out. So now I'm gonna go back to, just clean my brush. I'm gonna go back and add just a couple streaks of turquoise, clean it and dry it. And we'll get back in here, and I just felt there were a few spots in my water I thought could use a little more color. Especially if you're working in a clear bottle, you might find that you'll do this a few times. So I'm just gonna kind of add in just a few more pops of color. Still got some water on my brush, I'll just try that. So, you know, add a little array. And we're gonna be adding in waves later, which will give it even more depth. This is really our base for now. And like I said, it should be about halfway up your bottle. So if it's not, this is a good time to kind of finish out your horizon line and make sure you have enough space for your waves and your boat. Okay, so I'm just adding in a little color here or there. Okay. All right, see what I mean? If you go on it, it gets a little streaky when it's too wet. So if you just add a little more color, cover that up. Okay. So we're gonna take a few moments break, and I'll pop and talk to you while we let our bottles dry a little bit before we start our palm trees, okay? So we're gonna get started on our palm tree. This is all, the paint's pretty dry here. We're gonna be mixing in some brown. I'll add in a little white just to give the brown an opaque so it shows up on the bottle. I'm gonna save the bigger dune for our umbrella and our chair, so I'm gonna do the one right next to it, okay? I'm just gonna demonstrate one palm tree. It depends on how big your bottle is, if you'll have space for one or two. We can always go back, pause, rewind. I'm gonna have it come up above my horizon line. Because we're going on top of the dark blue sea, we'll probably have to do 2 layers. You could even add in a dab of black if you wanted to darken the trunk. Okay, so just a generous line here, coming down. All right. So yeah, we'll have them come up there. If you want to kind of have it curl over a little bit, that would be fine just to kind of frame it. So yeah, great. All right, so we'll get that cleaning, and now I'm gonna take a smaller detail brush and we're gonna get started on our palm leaves. So I have each of them with about 5 or 6 blossoms, and they kind of curl over. So as I said before, I have 2 different shades of green, but if you do want to get the desired lighter green, you can just add a little yellow to your dark green. So I'll start here. I'm just gonna do sweeping brush strokes. And the lines coming down are gonna come out like this. Kind of like a weeping willow type look. So actually gonna just get a thinner brush because that one was a little too thick for me. Hold on, this one's better. All right, perfect. So yeah, I'm just starting with the darker green. We're gonna add in the lighter green highlights later. All right, so there we have one. As you can see, it's a little streaky as usual with the glass paint. Might have to add in some second layers, but we'll start on our second palm now. I'm just kind of doing, and you can even have them curl down a little bit toward the end, because palm trees kind of do that. Okay. So I'll have another one coming out the side here, and just sweeping strokes, little curl at the end. Okay. And make it, you know, big and vibrant. It is kind of like a nice framing piece for the painting. Okay, I'll go up here. And like I said, it depends on, you know, what color your bottle is. You might want to add in another bit, layers of paint. And I'll do one coming up the top, why not? A nice like curl downward. All right, so I'm gonna go back in. A couple of them are a little light for me. Take a look back. So yeah, it's just a thin brush with a sweeping stroke. Okay. All right, so now I'm just gonna use paper towel to clean off my brush. I'm gonna try to add in some nice light greens. I might even mix a teeny bit of yellow to get a real nice tropical green color. And I'm just gonna start from the middle, add some highlights in there. And like I said, depends on how much space and how big you make yours. You might have space for a couple palm trees. You might just want one nice big one. Totally up to you and the size of your bottle and your beach scene. So it's just kind of adding a little dimension here. Feel free to go with a little yellow too, lighten it up. And that little curl at the end is a nice touch. Okay. All right, so we got it. And you'll want to let this dry a little bit before doing your coconuts, just because the paint might streak a little bit. So add in some nice little highlights here. All right, so there's your happy little palm tree. And great, okay. We're letting our palm tree dry a little bit before we can add in some extra layer of color, maybe to the trunk, as well as some coconuts. And if you wanted to add in some even more details of lines, you could even do some light green, you know, mixed with white highlights. That would be totally fine. So we're gonna go on to our beach scene. I'm gonna do some volcanoes. So I once again have my small detail brush. I just always feel more control with that. I'm gonna take my brown, add a teeny bit of black, and it totally depends how many mountains you want in your background. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna add a little bit of white there just to have it show up better. There we go. All right, so we have our little island in the distance here. And, you know, make a varying size. You could do one smaller one. Have them overlapping a little bit. Maybe one big one over here. Just basic little triangles. It's brown, as usual with the brown, just because it won't show up as well if you don't put a little white in. That's recommended. Okay. So now I'm just gonna wipe my brush off. And while it's still wet, like I said before with the blending, I'll take a little white and just add some to the top. Blends it in a little bit. And as usual, if you want to let your brown dry a little bit and add in more layer later, that's fine. All right. So next we're going to add some shadow underneath our volcanoes. So I'm going to grab my dark blue, small brush again, and I'm just going to add a little dark blue underneath for some shadow. Just kind of randomly. It just gives the illusion of a little bit of like an island or some depth for you. And if you like how the dark blue works, you could even sprinkle a little bit in on your ocean here and there. All right. Okay, great. So our beach theme's coming along here. We have our palm tree still drying a little bit. We have some mountains. So let's start adding in a couple waves. So we're gonna take some plain white, and actually I'm just gonna get this palette out of the way and be sticking with my blue one. And maybe add just a teeny bit of turquoise if you want. So the way the wave works is you're gonna do some like straight lines here. And then as you start running out of paint, you can dab at the top for that foamy section. So a couple lines, and then some little dabs at the top for where the wave would break. So depending on how you're framing it, those waves look like they're coming this way, so maybe we want some also coming in that way, closer to our palm tree. So do the same thing, maybe a teeny bit of blue in there, some lines on this side, and then dab at the top where the wave would break. Do a couple layers of that. Very light on the paint here. It's almost a dry brush technique, and that's going to give us that little dab look, the waves. So a little more paint for the lines. And then dab at the top. So feel free to add in that's fine, I was done. Very light on the paint. Almost a dry brush technique here. And then you might just have some little light white lines in there just to give your ocean some texture. So the waves kind of frame the painting, and the lines in the middle are just a nice little texture point. All right, now using the same technique, we're just going to take a completely dry brush, using the white again, and we're going to put in some clouds. So you're going to dab on your palette so you don't have much paint at all. We're going to put in some clouds. Now it's up to you if you're working again with the white bottle, maybe you want to have some blue clouds. Because I already have the blue background, I'm just going to do white. So just a couple little puffy clouds in the distance. Wherever you see fit. You can even have it close to the palm tree. And that's a dry brush technique, all right? So last for our sky, we're going to go back to our super thin brush. We're gonna do a couple birds. Now I'm gonna get a little more complicated than the usual bird that you see that they just do the V. So we're gonna make it look a little bit more like a seagull. So make sure you get your tiniest detail brush as possible. And you're gonna do, looks like a little mountain, and then another one. And then below that, just a line. So that's almost like the bird's body and then its wings. So it's two little V's, just like this, and then his body below. And that gives the look of a seagull. Show you one more time. So it's with a nice thin brush, got the two little mountains, and then his body a little thicker right below. And it gives the look of a seagull in your sky. So go ahead and keep adding in some clouds, some birds, some waves, you know, while you're working with the dry brush technique for both the sky and the water. All right, so let's do a boat demonstration next. And it's totally up to you on the color. I used a white sail, but feel free to use, you know, a little pop of color if you want to do yellow or something like that. So I'm just going to do a plain triangle, and I want him kind of coming out of the horizon a little bit. So, and big enough to be able to see. So I have my white triangle there. Okay. And then from around the same spot, I'm going to do the rounded sail. Okay. So there's the white section. Now let's grab some black. And we're going to do the base of the boat as well as the mast. The mast is just going to be straight up and down. Get a little more black there. And then we're going to have our boat at the bottom. Okay. Alright, so it's a simple sailboat. And like I said, you could do any color you like. Okay, and then he's got a nice little red flag. I guess maybe he's a pirate, I'm not sure. There. And there's our boat in the distance. Okay, let's get started on our nice beach umbrella. I'm gonna do the top first so that we can make sure that the stand is coming directly from the middle. So it's just gonna be about right here. And this is another example where you might have to do 2 layers, just because the ocean is behind us. So I got the red sections there. Just gonna clean my brush. And then let me get my blue stripes. Any color, as I said. You might want to do something brighter, like yellow. Okay. Okay. So I got that. Grab some black next. Make sure I have a nice thin detail brush for that. I'm gonna do stand. Just a straight line. And I might want to accent the outside a bit. So it pops. And like I said, this might, you know, be good with 2 coats of paint. Okay, we've got our little umbrella there. All right, next we're gonna do our little red chair. Stick with a pretty small brush. So we'll take some red again, the back of the chair. Seat. A little triangle coming out the side, and that's the side of the seat. And again, it looks a little rough. Go over with some black to pop. Okay. Slats on the back of our chair. Feel free to get creative. Maybe you want to, you know, put a little table or a cooler or canoe or anything you like. Okay, so we got our nice little beach scene there. Just demonstrate all the little elements that I had in my beach scene. And now's the time to maybe go back in. You might say your mountains are a little light in color. Add in a little bit of to brown there. Kind of darken them, and it would now be the time to darken your tree. I'll add in a little highlight here for your mountains. Yeah, you might say, oh, I want a little more texture there. Some palm trees have those like lines in them if you wanted to add that. How about even a little shadow below the palm tree? You can mix in a little white and brown. We have a little shadow there. Just blend it into the sand. And maybe you have little sunglasses you want to put on the beach. Any, you know, a little towel if you wanted to put a person. It's totally up to you. We're gonna do some coconuts now. We're gonna make a really, really dark brown. Mix black and brown. Just little circles. Here. Just keep darkening up the trunk. And then maybe you might take a look at your palm tree and think it needs some nice little highlights to it. Just again with the wispy brush strokes of a nice light yellow green. Just some highlights in there. Add some texture. And then you might also go back to your dry brush technique and add a little more, you know, detail to your water. Mix a little blue and white in there and just, you know, give the water some nice texture. Maybe there's a little bit of a wake under the boat. Add that in. Okay. All right. You want to put a little sun maybe on the top. If you're working with a clear bottle, you could always do a yellow or orange sky. That's totally up to you. So get creative with it. All right, so there's our bottle. Show you my finished one here one more time. Okay. Great, thanks everyone.